we get everybody. I got everything in place. I want to make sure before we get started. All right. So thank you, gentlemen, for volunteering actually to be able to be part of our panel. What I want to do is I'm going to stop sharing at this point and just focus on us. And we're going to take this opportunity to be able to first get to know you and then dive into your Teams phone journey just to let everybody else know, see, there's going to be a lot of synergies around, I think, and that's where I want to make sure that we're really understanding what's going on. So let's first start with this, and we'll go around the virtual room, so to speak. Name, company, title, and just a little bit about your company and the industry they happen to be in. And so let's start with Greg. If you want to kind of start with that, I'd appreciate that.
My name's Greg Mangino, and I am the Engineering Services Senior Manager at BakerHostetler. It's a AmLaw 100 law firm. We are basically U.S. only, so one of the larger U.S. only law firms. Our 6 core practices are business, digital assets and data management, intellectual property, labor and employment, litigation, and tax. Some of our specialty areas are antitrust, competition, blockchain, digital assets, class action defense, labor relations, patent litigation. So a multi-practice law firm based in just about every major U.S. city in the United States.
Perfect. Thank you, Greg. Lance, you want to go and kind of talk about your company?
Sure. Lance McDonald. We are, myself and Ginesh, are both with Capital Group Financial Services based out of Los Angeles, California. We've been around for 90-something years, and we are global. We have offices in all 3 major regions, and for this particular deployment, we touched everyone. So we've deployed across all the different regions. And in terms of who we are, we're in IT, obviously. I'm the principal engineer on that side. And this might be a good time to bring up Ginesh.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Lance. Thanks, Donald. Hello, everyone. My name is Ginesh Simon. I'm the engineer manager for Unified Communications at Capital Group of Companies, as Lance mentioned. We are a privately held global investment management company, as we have 32 offices across 15 countries. Like Lance mentioned, we've been around for 93 years, so we'll be celebrating our 100 years in 7 years, 2031. We have about 10,000 users, and from a phone deployment standpoint, we have about 15,000 to 17,000 phones. So we are on the journey, almost there, almost complete on our telephony migration journey.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Craig.
Craig Timmons. I'm with CRC Group Insurance. Used to be called Truist Insurance. I'm a UC architect for them. We started our journey kind of about April, May of 2024. We were spun off from Truist Financial in May.
Yeah.
And as part of that, we had to leave their phone system and we migrated over to Teams Phone. We did about 10,000 people in a little over 6 months and had about 28,000 numbers. We have lots of numbers. So it overall went pretty well. So
good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. So I guess one of the first questions that we really want to get started is, thinking about the journey that you have is what really motivated? What was that thing that really kept you going, hey, we really need to think about going to Teams Voice and Teams Phone for our organization, and then kind of kicked off that project? And Craig, I would love if I could have you start that and kind of talk about that a little bit more, with those numbers that you were talking about, but what really made that happen for you guys and made you start that process?
Sure. So a little bit about me. I came into CRC Group in November of 2023. And at that point in time, we knew the divestiture was going to happen and we knew about what time it was. So we were going through all the process of planning how to get off of Cisco Call Manager over to Microsoft Teams. There was I'm going to call it the ease of maintaining, migrating, cost. There's a lot of flexibility. One of the things that we heard a lot of people talk about is whenever they would need a phone change, some sort of change made, where we left, it could take weeks for it to occur. And one of the things we felt was a benefit was flexibility. It was something we could easily change with very quickly, right? You didn't have to wait days or go and troubleshoot and all that kind of thing. So there was that part of it. Ella Wright, who's our engineer from Microsoft that we worked with, and the rest of the Microsoft team, they made we moved with calling plans, and they made that very cost effective for us. Microsoft brought in a partner to help. When we first got started, it was me, and then it was one or two other people. We've got a total of 4 people on our team, so we're very slim, and we were fortunate to have a partner to come in to help with that migration. So, and I joke with people, my hair was dark when we started, but but we made it through without we actually did pretty well. There was a private equity company that bought us, and they basically said it was one of the smoothest transitions because we did, not just phones, we did all of Azure, Active Directory, everything. Yeah. We went through all kinds of things. Yeah, it was, absolutely. We referred to it as a big bang. So
yeah. And when you're divesting, right, that's always going to be something that you're going to have that type of scenario. So
yeah.
Good. Thank you, Craig. Greg, can you kind of tell us a little bit about your guys starting, right? What motivated you guys to go down the direction of Teams Voice?
Absolutely. And I'm going to go back 5 years now because it's the 5-year anniversary today of us going remote. So we were basically challenged during the pandemic. They said, okay, and it's funny because our director started making calls. What's it going to take to get everybody remote? And in basically 2 weekends, we had the entire firm, 18 offices, working remote. And there was one major exception, the phone system. So that, everybody was, either able to access all of our applications, everything. And we were remote for a full 2 years before the call back to the office occurred. During the time we were remote, we started to explore because we knew Call Manager was end of life. So we too were a Call Manager migration. And we started playing with the Teams phone calling plans. We were an E5 customer. IT got some numbers. We started talking to the then CIO about, what we were looking at.
Yep.
We had a request from our intellectual property group. A lot of people that do a lot of the patent litigation and actually patent management. Yep. And they needed to make international phone calls, and they didn't want to be using cell phones. Everybody was using cell. So we got a handful of international dial plans and enabled these people at home, and away they went. So the next challenge was we had an IVR system. We have a breach hotline that we manage through our digital assets group. And it was managed by an outsourced help desk, and it was very clunky. They would take the calls there, and then they try to pass them back to the breach group and get somebody hooked up. And we got a challenge. They said, okay, guys, do you think you could do this in Teams phone? And that's when we got introduced to Jeff Bart. We started down that process, and I'll say, I think we scared Jeff at first because he thought we were coming to him to help us set it up. Yeah. But really, we've got an amazing technical team, that we work with here. These guys figured this stuff out. We had all of the auto attendants, the call queue set up. We were porting 800 numbers from the previous help desk over to Microsoft. Went through a number of the processes and were wildly successful with the IVR group. It was the breach hotline was integrated in with Teams. We looked at some tools so that we could start doing management of call data records for that. So there was follow-up that was occurring with that. We were posting voicemails to a team site for them. We had a shared calendar. So who's managing the hotline? They loved it. And so did the CIO. So she started on, and it was a new CIO at that time as well.
Okay.
And she started on a road trip to sort of manage and start selling this to the rest of the partnership. This is something we're thinking of going to. So we had Teams phones that we were showing and talking about the capability. But during the pandemic, everybody was also using Teams audio to communicate interpersonally, inter-office communications.
Mhm.
So people were getting familiar with Teams audio there. And from that point on,
That's
once
good.
she had leadership bought in, away we went. And we started the project last year. It was right around the beginning of the year. I could talk a little bit more about the structure of it because we did win an award
Yeah. Oh,
for
good.
that. But
Very good.
we were deployed by August, and
Very good.
That's great.
it was
Yeah, that
it
is
was
awesome.
really a great journey. It was a great journey,
And
and leveraged the E5. So
yeah,
here,
well, right.
got
So
more
there's
value out of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's some value out of that. And you mentioned Jeff Bart, just to make sure everybody knows, Jeff Bart is a converged communication CSA that works at Microsoft, supporting you as you were going through this journey, helping you those types of things as well. So perfect. Thank you, Greg.
Outstanding resource. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. I know
Yes,
personally, I would agree with that. Yes. So Lance, I don't know if you want to talk as far as what you guys were doing at Cap Group. Is how did you guys get that started in that journey in moving to Teams Voice?
And
Sure.
maybe to add on, anything that you may have encountered, issues as you encountered, and perhaps add on a partner that you may have worked with so we could put all this together.
It's been a joyful journey. There's some color to it for sure. And some of this will pass over to Ginesh as well, because he's been leading the charge on the actual deployment. He's got a lot of dynamics that we've worked through. Reason for it for us, similar to what Greg just mentioned and what Craig was talking about. The cards really went up in the air. Good point, Greg, 5 years ago. And that ambiguity was a big question mark. For Capital, we rotated to remote very quickly, and we're successful there. The questions about Teams all in for voice, for meetings, for content, for collaboration started getting exciting a couple of years ago. And we saw Teams Voice as a critical foundational component to the bigger picture.
Okay.
What do we think about in terms of bringing the whole infrastructure together in one place? And this was before the Gen AI acceleration, really.
Yeah.
One of our bigger questions was, we have an infrastructure that's working really, really well. Switching cost is high. Why do it? And we're so glad we started the foundational research and building prototypes on site early. So when the promise of something like Copilot came along, we were prepared. And that just pushed us along with an even better, faster story to the bigger picture. So voice is really foundational. We decided to take that approach while the offices were mostly available to us. We've been in RTO for quite a while, and focused very, very heavily on the change management pieces of what happens when your physical phone goes away.
Yeah,
it's a signal, right? It's a big thing. There's a lot to it. There's optics. There's a lot going on there. We have some of our users that use the phone very differently, be it regional or be it multi-lines. A lot of more complicated things than just peer-to-peer, point-to-point. And we focused very heavily on, if the phone works every time when you pick it up, how do we keep that smooth as possible? And really did a lot of research on the UC peripherals behind it.
Okay.
A ton, a lot. It's one of my favorite stories. We just decided to do it on our own. We didn't do a partner for this. We went out and on our own purchased a Teams version of every major manufacturer device at the time.
Okay.
And then ran it through our entire org, and Ginesh's team really hammered on all of them to try to find the one best manageable manufacturer for that, for both on support on their side, biggest portfolio. Does it feel right? Does this help with the transition? Does it help you stay mobile? Can we go speakerphones to headsets and solve that problem? And that was a huge win in terms of the ease of the phones going away and folks, frankly, not noticing. and they get a new headset on transition day. It really helped us out in terms of moving towards that combined mobile idea. So really, voice was a piece of a durable framework we wanted to get to. And that helped us make the decision, and it helped us get motivation behind it, and push through when things got interesting. But in all honesty, Ginesh's team, along with some others and our partners, really laid out a very successful deployment, and one that we're all very proud of. And users' adoption has been fantastic.
That's awesome.
Interesting. You did point out, John, I just want to make a comment that you highlighted your change management adoption. Critical for that success. And so I think the second you take your foot off the gas on that motion, people start using other forms or forget about it. So is there a continuation with that effort?
On change management for the enterprise?
Yeah.
It's a really good question. It's a really good question. We aren't the largest company. We've got tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but we're absolutely multi-regional, complex, and high touch, like a lot of knowledge groups would be. So I would say that our change management functions really think carefully about this. We really try to put a lot of extra value, more than just delivering something, perceived value of helping a customer through the entire process of it. So I would say that we have our own frameworks for it. And those teams don't go away. We have them project over project. So you're right. It isn't, we're finally deployed. Great. SOW's done. We won't see those people again. These are familiar faces we keep inside. And that really counts. So we've got the institutional knowledge to know, okay, which personas need extra high touch, which personas will be deployed remotely versus on site. Pretty detailed. Really important to get that right. You can't make it perfect, but you got to be intentional to it.
Yeah. Did you build a champions group around that as well to help, offset some of that? I see Greg shaking his head like.
That's classic. It really helps. And I will say that for voice, the timing and the connection to the promise of Copilot was one of the better champions that we could have had from an external side. Folks were starting to get the connective tissue because voice was coming first. It was foundational. Once they started feeling that difference, that could get us to Teams meetings, which would get us to something like intelligent recap, which is really powerful. So our best champions could see that whole thread and say, hey, let the phone go, grab a headset. It's going to be amazing.
Agreed.
And that really helped.
Right. Thank you for that clarity.
Agreed. Yeah. Well, and let's stick on that adoption thing a little bit. I mean, so, you guys talked a little bit about what you guys were doing at Cap Group. Greg, do you want to kind of talk a little bit about, how important was adoption, change management as part of your rollout, especially for how quickly things happened, and, that process that you guys had?
It was crucial. And, we knew that from the onset. Our project organization, we ended up doing a program management office where we had essentially 3 tiers to that. We had the back end infrastructure, we had client side, which was sort of the front end we were dealing with. And then the project management office really did focus on change management. And we worked very closely we have our own internal training team. We leveraged resources that we got from Microsoft. We built out a number of things, and we just kept the message coming that, Teams Phone is coming. We were promoting the idea, hey, if you really want to get more familiar with this and understanding how the audio is going to work, how this is going to work, start using Teams calls internally more. Stop calling on your mobile, back and forth. But we had leave behinds. We had a series of training. We did look at personas some, but really from a knowledge worker perspective, it's really about the relationship between our attorneys, the partners, the associates, and so forth, and then all of the rest of the support staff that's supporting them. So, it was really, how do we get them on board? How do we, and again, you talked about physical devices. we did the same thing. We brought them all in. We were beating the daylights out of them. We sent some recommendations up, including no phones. And our leadership of the firm decided no phones. So that really simplified things in terms of the deployment for us. But it also was, a huge change. How am I going to operate, without a phone? So again, our training team was great in driving that home. And adoption was great. I mean, there was really no questions. There wasn't a lot of pushback. We had several partners, and this happens in law firms often. They said, I'd like to buy my own phone. So I think there were maybe 5 or 6 of them that bought based on our recommendations from the standard that we chose, and they purchased their own phone, and that was it. We thought, oh no, the floodgates have opened up and we're going to lose control of the no phone. So really what that drove, and the message was, is that the phone's not a device. The phone's attached to a person, and it really did line up with what I hadn't mentioned yet, our modern workplace initiative, which really was driven out of that whole pandemic scenario, that we really started to take that, you work any place, anywhere, you're BakerHostetler, no matter where you are.
Wherever you are, yeah.
That really went over well. So
that's good to hear. Excellent. So let me pause on that before I get Craig to do it. Our other presenter was able to make it. So Dan, I want to bring you on if you want to come off mute and just do a quick, hey, who are you, who you work for? And then we can continue the conversation we were just having.
Sure. I'm Dan Balitewicz. I'm a principal enterprise architect at Kellognova company. I handle our Microsoft strategy for basically all things Microsoft, I'd say.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks, Dan.
And welcome to the group. So we were literally just having a conversation. So understanding, especially as you're deploying Teams Voice, how big of a piece is adoption change management was that as far as part of your project? I don't know if you can talk to that a little bit about what you guys did with your project.
Yeah, so we're a little bit unique. Teams Voice was really easy for us to deploy, and that might sound a little bit weird. We've been on a voice journey for probably 7 years at this point. So we started deploying meeting capabilities back when it was Link, and then Skype for Business, deploying pools, SIP infrastructure, and everything else within our organization. So we were doing Skype for Business Enterprise voice migrations before COVID actually happened, migrating corporate offices and things of that nature. We are a manufacturing company, so we have taken that all the way down into our manufacturing facilities, where you tend to find a lot of, legacy PBXs, paging capabilities, and unique dial plans and things of that nature that exist out there. So we started there, but we really started when we didn't want to pay WebEx $1 gazillion anymore and so forth, and deployed Link for meetings. And then one thing led to another. Cisco was charging $1 gazillion as well to do a refresh year, just to put more phones on people's desks, but not give them any sort of, capabilities that we see today that we probably take for granted, like mobility and things of that nature. So that's kind of how we started. So by the time Teams calling, Teams Voice came along, we were probably 90+% complete on the voice side on Skype. So it was just migrating users over there.
So it wasn't much of a change, right? Going from Skype, well, it is. I mean, Skype to Teams is a big change, but once they made that transition, I mean, they were already there, right?
They're seamless.
Yeah.
They had that experience already, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. A lot of stuff changed. I've heard a lot of COVID comments on here. A lot changed after COVID. So the corporate reliance upon phone systems, really, even when we were deploying, wasn't as much as it used to be. Delegate relationships and stuff like that with executives was still pretty important, but we were preparing not for a COVID type situation, but we were working towards a work anywhere type environment where for corporate workers, you could pretty much pick up and go and be able to connect to everything. That was kind of the mantra that we had behind it. So yes, manufacturing facilities, no. I mean, they never went home during COVID. They produced 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the entire time. So their phone needs are by far significantly different than a corporate user. And even by region, phone behaviors differ. Asia still uses phones like we did 10 years ago, at least in our
Mhm.
company. So they still request phone numbers and everything else just because of long distance rates between countries and so forth, and how vendor relationships are managed.
Okay. Good. Thank you, Dan, for that.
Yeah.
Craig, you want to just a little bit about adoption change management, how that was influenced and used within your project?
Sure. A lot of this was, as somebody said earlier, it was kind of sold to the management, and we had agreement from high up down. Everybody, and it was publicized. A lot of that was so people knew it was coming. They didn't know what everything was going to be involved with that, so people knew it was coming. Weren't necessarily sure when. We were fortunate that we were able to find in each line of business. We have about 6, 7 different lines of business. That we had people, if you want to call them the champions, power users, that we could work with and go, where are the landmines, right? And, what's a good area to start? What's the last area we want to do? Some of those kind of things. There was one person I remember, a colleague of mine, works in a different section. When we went to New York City, he said, Joe is going to ask you for a phone and maybe 2 phones. Don't fight it, just give it to him. Knowing those kind of things ahead of time. And, to be totally honest, we did not end up with very many phones. The majority of the people, we worked with the office administrators and those kind of things, those kind of people. And most lines of business decided upon one type of headset, and we just sent the headsets out to the people. We have a lot of remote workers.
Okay.
There's some that come in the office a couple days a week, but we're very predominantly remote. And the thing that was interesting when we were when we had people with Call Manager, they would have phones at home, and we just said, no, you're not getting phones at home. You get a headset. And one of the big things was get a headset that works with your cell phone as well as Teams, so that you're going to like this even better. And then we showed them the Teams mobile app. And in the past, I've had some people go, so I don't have to give out my personal cell phone number anymore. They can just get the calls on their cell phone using the Teams mobile app. Yep, this is great. They loved it. Now, we did have a few people that came through and said, I want a phone on my desk. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
I was just looking a minute ago. We have roughly 400 common area. We have roughly 400 physical phones. So, and a majority of those are like common area phones or conference phones.
Okay.
Very
So
few
not a
are
lot
on.
with users that
Not a
are
lot with
associated with
users.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So that was really big. Everybody's got their vendor they like to deal with. Find that one vendor, and I'm going to try to be vendor agnostic. Find that one vendor you're comfortable with and try to do everything through that one vendor. You'll get more features, you'll get more response. They'll come back and say, hey, we've got management portals, we'll help you do with this. And, it just makes life easier. You know, some will like Poly, some will like Jabber, some will like whatever. So just, find that one, and go through your process and decide what works best for you.
Yeah. And that's kind of like what Lance was saying, when they did that, they brought all those devices in and tested it out and said, okay, this is where we're going in that direction. So that's good advice overall. So I guess one question. So thank you for everybody that. Great things. Sounds like everything went well, but did everything go well? Did you have any challenges that you kind of had to overcome? And we don't have to go through all of them, but give me a couple, like one that really was a big challenge you needed to overcome and how you guys overcame that with your solution. That would be very helpful just for people to understand some of the things, especially it may be more industry related. Maybe not, but I wonder if, Greg, if you want to kind of start challenge-wise as far as your deployment.
Well, one of the large challenges we ran into in the beginning was a lot of attorneys had multiple numbers, right? And so we had to figure out a way to get multiple numbers to ring on one attorney's phone. They maybe have presence in, several of our offices in Cleveland, Chicago, and LA, for instance. How do we make those phones ring? The private line really didn't work because they needed to have that two-way calling. So we weren't just looking at, and on top of that, we had every one of those attorneys has a secretary or an administrative assistant that also needed to be able to answer those multiple lines. Yeah. So we got very creative with call queues and started setting up call queues for these attorneys, and found that, in some initial test requirements, we even had one attorney with an international number in Frankfurt, Germany. You can't take this. It was another pandemic sort of, how do we do this? We could do that. We have an address in Germany. We're doing business there with a number of companies. Here you go. It worked out great, but he didn't want to lose it. He says it really has been an advantage to him, calling on his German clients. So we got that working quite well. It was an initial like, oh my gosh, how are we going to make this work? And it went over very well. The other thing that I would have to say, and we did a lot of this planning, was plan for the unexpected, right? Mm-hmm. So, our first deployment, we went through a number of scenarios in terms of what's going to happen with the phone system. So we went through some disaster recovery for scenarios, and actually on our first deployment weekend, one of our, first large office weekends, one of our major internet providers, so we lost internet across the firm because they had a major outage. And then at the end of that week, we got CrowdStruck. So the whole CrowdStrike issue came up, and what ended up happening was the phone system kept running, right? We had servers that we were trying to bring back online and all of this other stuff, and no problems with Teams Phone. Everything just kept working. So there was a lot of advantage of getting things to the cloud, but then also having that comfort level with the upper management.
Yeah.
But the multi-line issue has still continued to be, it would be nice if there were other features where you could actually assign the two numbers.
Yep.
And I think one of the big challenges we still are struggling through is the phone really doesn't handle the executive assistant scenario well. Things like intercom features. We tried walkie-talkie. That really was just too complicated. It didn't work. It sounded like it might, but it didn't. Three-way calling, where you're transitioning from one person, you want to add another person. Now it's become a meeting, and you've lost some features that you would have had and expected in the call. So those are still some struggles that we're still trying to address as best as we possibly can. But overall, I guess that's in a nutshell some of our bigger issues. We had.
That's great feedback.
Yeah, I can add to that also.
Please.
We have the same challenges with
please
call
do
queue,
that.
right? So we are in the journey almost. We are about 90-95% with a few sites left in Asia, but we ran into the same issue as Greg as well. Call queue was an issue when you compare to the legacy platform, right? You don't have the same capabilities within the teams. But now there's the new call queue app that might address some of the issues. But we had the sequential routing issue where we couldn't do that in Teams. One other thing we ran into, like Greg mentioned, if the admins are supporting multiple people, there's a visibility. You couldn't really see all the calls coming into the queue. If someone else answered, then you wouldn't know if someone answered unless someone left a voice message, then you would be able to see. So just from a visibility standpoint for the admins or people supporting multiple lines, had a lot of challenges. We didn't see this in the US, but Asia, because they used phones a lot. We found an issue where speed dials, if you set it up on the desk phone, they don't transfer to mobile, right? You don't see the same speed dials, or there are some issues. You don't see the names display on the mobiles, and especially in Asia, they're heavy on phone on the mobile. So that was another issue we had. Like Greg mentioned, we also had the conference call issue. In the legacy system, you answer a call if you want to bring someone in, you make a call and you merge the call. So when you do that in Teams, that gets escalated to a meeting. And now
Yep.
when you're calling that third person, what they're seeing is the meeting number that's coming in. So they don't really see who is calling, right? There are some workarounds, manual workarounds. You can drop the call and make multiple calls and merge. Again, those are some of the things that we are still working on. If you have a receptionist console like we do, that's
Yep.
one item to watch for. You need to have another device like Neat devices. Again, it goes back to the call queue. You have to tie to a call queue. So there's some additional configuration that we have to do there as well. I wouldn't say a challenge, but on the voicemail part, now that is being delivered to Outlook. Just being a financial company, there are things like compliance comes into picture, right? So you need to make sure from a compliance angle, you work with your legal and compliance to make sure the archiving is done, because now everything is part of Exchange and that get archived based on that policy. So those are some of the things that we came across.
Okay. From a challenge perspective. Good.
Yeah.
Craig, any challenges on your deployment that you kind of want to kind of talk?
Yeah, so some of the things we ran into, it deals with the inventory from where we left. We had the inventory that they had, it was very old and it was very large.
Okay.
And they would say, here are your numbers that you can port, and there were numbers missing, there were numbers that were incorrect. There was a lot of those kind of things that we had to go through and do a lot of investigation on. And that's not really Teams related, but that was one of the big challenges we had. When we went through to create the auto attendance main lines, call queues, what one person said it was supposed to be set up this way, somebody else would come back and say it was supposed to be set up another way.
Of course.
And so we'd go ahead and create them the way we were told. Then on cutover day, there was a lot of, oh, well, it should be Sally, not Fred, and it needs to ring this way, not that way. And Sally left yesterday, and and no, that's not the option. It was all those kind of things. The main lines, there was a lot of tweaking with the main lines. If you had the right people involved at the branches, it went much better, and we tried to get them to do testing. Sometimes they would test, sometimes they wouldn't. That would go away. That would go a lot. We also ran into, and again, some of this comes back to what I call the inventory. Hey, I didn't get assigned my old number. Well, we'd have to go and find what their old number was and see about porting it, and we'd have to have workarounds to port that number. That number will still work for you, and we worked with Truist to get the number forwarded to a temporary number until we could port. We had to have a lot of workarounds, and there was or we'd port a number that Truist needed to keep, and so we had to work. We had to work very closely with that company. And there was a lot of workarounds. We just had to be prepared for a lot of workworkarounds.
Sounds like it.
Some of the other, we experienced a little bit of what the other ones were talking about. One of the things we did run into is reporting. We have one section that said, hey, we want reports to see how many phone calls our agents are making, because they make a lot of outbound calls. And I'd run some reports, and they go, I know Sally's making more than 10 phone calls today. Well, you start talking to Sally, somebody kind of mentioned this earlier, Sally's using transcription because she's a little bit hard of hearing, so she can make sure she can see and read everything that's being said. Well, all of a sudden that turns it into a conference. So we had to include conferences on the reports. There's some of those kind of things. So you just got to be prepared for whatever comes your way. Just and make sure people understand whatever comes around, we can figure out a workaround and we can fix it. And it may not be today, but we can make it work and have the final solution. And once numbers get ported back and forth or whatever. So
agreed. Yep. Greg, do you have something to add to that?
Just real quick, and he's talking about reporting. reporting was so key to us because the CDR would feed back into a billable system. So we used software that basically tracks where the attorneys are spending their time. And that was so important to be there and available on day one. So we had to make sure that, we were doing exactly that. We had to get the calls. We also, because of this shift over to meetings, we had to be catching the conferences as well, so that then that could then go part and parcel back to their being able to reconcile at the end of the month and send in their billable time. So that was also a bit of a challenge. We got a lot of help from Microsoft in it and looking at more modern ways of doing that. I'm drawing a blank right now on the system that Jeff pointed us at. I'm
sure he'll throw it in the chat. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. But when he started talking about, that was a crucial point, and that was a challenge throughout. Was making sure that our call data was exactly as it needed to be, so we weren't losing billable time.
That makes sense.
Ginesh, you had to follow up.
Yeah, just want to add, if there are any financial customers on the call, right, on the compliance side, especially in Europe, MiFID II is a key. So want to make sure you get that early in your planning to make sure you work with those partners and have the compliance in place, because we have requirements in Europe where we have to capture voice for specific teams like traders, for example, right? And US has different regulations. So getting ahead of that really helps.
Yep. And finding those partners, right, to be able to provide those compliance recordings or some of those pieces that you may need to augment what you have in Teams already are going to be very important on that conversation. Lance, quick, and then I want to get to Dan.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of double down on that, if we were going to offer some advice for the big moves, there are really two major things from kind of a more traditional infrastructure to Microsoft Teams that we really thought about. Ginesh just is right. You got to partner, at least in a regulated compliance environment like us, with your LNC teams, your legal and compliance teams, from the beginning all the way, because the way that voicemail works and the way that things are captured is so different. You have to keep them on the journey. That's key to success. The other bit too is I think we've talked a little bit across the board. It's amazing when you find out what local, regional, small teams have built inside of your infrastructures that they say are business critical for them. And you go, really? That's what you're doing with it? And translating every one of those use cases over just doesn't happen. So to the change management point, you have to go, what are you trying to accomplish? Find out what it works in the new environment and get them over that way. All of those hurdles were really important. And yes, that's classic change management, but it was brought into large contrast with this one. It was really important to work. So there's a lot of organizational behavior pieces and change management pieces, and it isn't just a technology solve. I think that's the biggest thing.
I would agree. Yeah, well, and I found with my customers that I have worked with specifically, successful deployments hinge on that, right? From an organizational change management, not just the adoption change, but the organizational level, right? And getting that buy-in high up and making sure everybody's on the same page, so important for it to actually be successful. So great point. Thank you. Hey, Dan, quick, from an issue, right? Challenges. Give us one or two of those that you found that were really big, especially, you moved from Skype and Link and Skype into Teams, but was there any big challenges as you were moving over?
Yeah, I think all the guys on the call have, addressed a lot of topics, and they're really big fish to fry, to be completely honest. They're oversimplifying it because the call's short. All of it's difficult. I would say for us, supply chain facilities are really difficult, and you can't treat them all like they're the same. So we made a decision way early on. We staffed all this in-house. We did very, very little outside of our organization. We hired a rock star telephony person who are really hard to find, that can jump on a Mitel, a ShoreTel, and a Avaya, a Cisco, and so forth, do analysis, conduct interviews at sites to figure out how people are using on the phone. Craig touched on it. we may not be able to do it this way, but we can do it another way, and making sure that we train people, show them how to use headsets, the importance of every device upstream from PCs, wireless access controllers, QoS, E911 policies, and building all that stuff up from the ground up, but treating every location like it's different and so forth. And knowing that one of the things that, I've been here for 23 years, so I've seen us try to deploy Avaya globally, fail. I've seen us try to deploy Cisco globally and fail, and so forth. This is hard work and so forth, but telephony in organizations tends to be treated as an absolute bastard stepchild. I've seen it here, and I've talked to other folks where they tell sites, go get yourself a PBX, pay your bills, go get whatever lines you want, and then you end up with a stack of 600 invoices that are all getting sent to the same place, and the next thing you know, you're spending $6 million a year on all this, and people have calling cards that you're paying for that are never being used. There's no call accounting and whatnot over there. It's trying to figure out what that cost is. SIP, absolute game changer. You have to have a SIP architecture. The telcos are going to charge you $1 bajillion today for anything legacy that you're keeping, PRIs, BRIs, POTS lines, and everything else. You have to figure out a way to rationalize cost as much as possible, because in the end, it isn't Teams that's saving you the money. It's taking all this legacy stuff out of it. Teams itself is the overall catalyst and driver of it. It has to work, right? It does work really, really well and so forth. But all those things have to be done and so forth. But we found having a telephony engineer, having a bunch of BAs, OCM is really important, is to make sure that people know what they're moving over to and everything else. Call accounting was talked about. We had that as well. Manufacturing facilities love that stuff, to make sure that people who call in sick are actually making that call. And so delivering daily reports for sick lines and things of that nature are really important. DID management, hugely important. We got so frustrated with paying so much money. We built our own Power App. We manage all of our DID ranges, porting numbers, really, really hard. Even telco, even Verizon to Verizon can be a lot of work and so forth. And trying to consolidate, okay, I see Greg. Yeah. And trying to consolidate all that stuff, is a lot of work. But at the end of the day, it is absolutely positively worth doing it. And then I'll just add one more comment on supply chain facilities to give my uniqueness, is that you got to go into these facilities knowing that most of them have not been touched in a long time. So having a 15, 20-year-old paging system is not uncommon. You may end up replacing it. A lot of this telco stuff was meant to run forever because it doesn't have a lot of moving parts and so forth. So some of it works, some of it doesn't. You touch speakers, you touch wiring, things break. So bring money to the table to fix those things. So we walked in these facilities as a goodwill gesture. We fixed every IT problem that they had, no matter what the issue was. We had smart enough people on site to do that and whatnot. So no matter what it was, new phones, analog phones are super important. We have thousands of analog phones and so forth. Buy the best analog phone you can find with noise cancellation for a manufacturing facility. Spend the money and so forth, and replace everything that's there. Align on a single SBC controller for yourself. Don't care if it's audio codes, ribbon, or whoever you're using. Align on one if you can, because that makes your management simple. And try to outsource as much of that afterwards for management, maintenance, and everything else. So that would be my learnings. I mean, but the guys on the call,
Perfect.
I mean, it's a lot of work, guys. And
Well,
Those are great points, Dan.
Yeah, and that was great. I love that, especially that you were able to find a rock star person to be able to touch that and do all those things. But that not everybody can do or find that. Jeff mentioned it's hard to find a rock star person that can do all those pieces and understand all those systems. So
no, they're retiring.
Well,
that's
that's true. They are, because all the legacy systems are going away, right? But I mean, as far as a partner side of things, I mean, quick raise of hands. Did you guys use a partner to help you guys get going and get it deployed? Right? Yeah. So I mean, I think those are. I mean, yeah. I mean,
we use partners with Skype is where we used to build out Skype pools. But then after that, they did a great job. I won't bash the partners there, but what we found with partners is we asked. I won't throw any partners' names out there and so forth. let's have the same group of folks go to every facility, and we'd make 2 facilities, and then the entire team would change, and that facility would be a disaster, and we end up deploying the whole team out there to do it, and so forth.
That
So
makes sense.
nature of the beast.
Agreed.
Yeah, I just want to
All
add,
right.
we also did, there's a lot of Microsoft workshops that we do, right? So you can partner. So if you have a team, you engage with Microsoft, go through that workshop, it really inform your team for that approach, right? And then when you engage with a partner, now you have the understanding. And then it's really, for us, it was really validating some of our assumptions and approaches. So I think I encourage anyone to go through that workshops. I believe it comes with partnership.
I'll double down on that. The resources that Microsoft offered to us for us to get up to speed and do the pre-work saved us so much time and helped us find the right partners who can speak that language, have an idea where to go.
Yeah, agreed with that.
Yeah, and one more comment. I mean, don't underestimate the power of the product group, because Ilya's team, if you guys haven't dealt with those guys, they have been phenomenal during this. They've listened to me complain constantly about everything. Pratik Diddy is on the call. He's my EDE on this side and so forth. But those guys have been great partners because they wanted to make it work.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Agreed.
Your feedback is critical, Dan, and all of our customers' feedback is super critical, and that's how we make these changes that we can to the product line and continually advancing. So yeah.
All right, so I know we're getting close to time, so I want to just quick round the room. What's one thing that you want to leave, kind of last thought that you want to leave with our attendees for today, as far as your migration, things that you've learned? Let's, keep it a little short, but give me a thought, something that would be great, right? So
30 seconds, and then we got to wrap it up.
30 seconds, yeah. Craig, why don't you go ahead?
Having somebody who can interface with the business and knows the right people to talk to was very important. Being new to the company, I didn't know those people. I didn't know how to deal with those people. They got me somebody who could. That was invaluable. There's any number of things, but that really went a long way. Kudos to our Microsoft team, because they came in and helped keep things on track as far as what I'm going to call it. It wasn't, to somebody's point, keeping track of DIDs and what is in Teams and what is not is just a nightmare. I don't care who you are, it's a nightmare. And Dan, I want to talk to you about what you did.
Just reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Or ping me on this. My SIP address is out there, or whatever it's called now.
Exactly. Greg.
Sure. Number one, plan, right? Our project management team being ready for change management, the way we structured everything. Like I said, they just won an award from the Project Management Institute for submitting this project. It was very successful the way we did it. The other thing is, don't be afraid to make adjustments and changes. We started off thinking we were going Operator Connect. We actually did a bake-off between 2 partners. One was very Operator Connect focused. The other was our legacy partner for our call manager environment. And we ended up selecting Direct Route. We had the talent inside. And I think, because we went Direct Route, we were in more control of our destiny. We didn't have to worry about porting numbers. We didn't have to worry about things being there on time. We delivered our weekend deployments. Were completely controlled by scripts. And from a number management, we had large dial plans in every city. So making adjustments to, helped us make our dates, even though it looked like, oh no, we're going to switch from this to that. So anyway, it was
that makes
just be
sense.
ready, understand what you're doing, and don't be afraid to make a change.
Good. Thank you. Lance, Ginesh, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just do a quick one. I know it's gonna be high level, but I think it counts. Work with your leadership teams and your business culture deeply to build conviction around the reason why, because it will get scary before you do it. It will have changes. Costs could move. Legal compliance is there, and your story has to be really sturdy to get through all that. But once you do, it's worth it.
Perfect. Thank you. You want to add anything?
Moving to soft phone, taking a desk phone, running your VoIP over internet, it is scary, but it's not as scary as you would think, right? But as others mentioned, do all the assessment, including all the special setup, decide on the approach as early if you can, whether it's direct routing or calling plan or operator connect, and develop a solid technical and also business readiness plan, right? And engage your key stakeholders. And I would recommend going side by side, so you have a lot of learnings that you can do and lessons learned on the next side. So like Greg mentioned, don't afraid to make changes on your approach.
Perfect. Dan, finish us off.
Be obsessed.
Be obsessed.
It's got to be an absolute positive obsession with you, with everything, to do this correctly. And we just were obsessed for years to get this done because we knew it was the right thing for our company.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great last thing to say. Thank you, gentlemen. Jonathan had to jump off, but on behalf of both of us, thank you for taking some time. Thank you for answering a lot of these questions. I appreciate the time. And I'm hoping the attendees appreciate that as well. We've got some good comments already. So thank you. With that, we will drop you guys off.